Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, Jim. I really appreciate your time here at Next in Line. Before we get started, Jim, and I'm going to, do me the honors of please introduce yourself and a little bit of highlight background who you are. But I also like to remind everybody about what Next in Line is all about and the mission. We've been around now for almost 5 months, and I will tell you that we've recorded over 45 episodes so far. And we have like 30 in the queue that are ready, scheduled to be interviewed as well. And I feel like the reason why that's happened is because of our mission. Our mission, North Star, is literally to pay it forward. And our community is kind of across the board. It's mostly IT community. There's CMOs and there's obviously CHROs as well mixed in there, but it's from anyone from just graduated with a CS degree or cert to like that's, first time I just got my first C-suite job to the veteran CIO. It's kind of across the board and leadership. So I really want to thank you for your time in advance about this, because when we met, and I had the great opportunity to meet you in person in Texas, and it was a wonderful conversation. And you really, I wrote down a lot of pages of notes. I was writing pages and pages of notes and some nuggets that you dropped during our first initial meeting. So I'm excited for the community to listen to you today. So if you don't mind, Jim, can you introduce yourself and let us know how a little bit about yourself and how you got into IT?
Sure. My name is Jim Bailey. I'm sit as the Chief Information Officer for an industrial turnaround company. We are in the Houston area, in Deer Park. Kind of how I fell in technology was an accident. I've been doing IT for some 30 plus years. I started as an intern at IBM, and just through a fluke, got exposed to technology. My degree is originally in marketing, but through that fluke, I, got exposed and worked on, some of the 1980s technology, and didn't really understand or know that I had an aptitude for that, and that led to a whole other career path. So I'm about one of the only CIOs you'll see that actually has a marketing degree and not a CIS degree.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So I say sometimes I feel like sometimes these our calling sometimes finds you, right? So how did it actually happen? Like, you got this marketing degree and you're marketing intern, IBM, I believe you said, and were you just volunteered for something or something just got kind of tapped on the shoulder?
No, there were two of us over there. So one was doing the technology. I was doing the marketing side at the Dallas Customer Center with IBM. And the technical person was out for a couple of weeks. So I'm a warm body and an intern. And so I got tasked to do this. And after a couple of days, the lady that's running the customer center said, I didn't know you could do all this stuff. And I told her, neither did I. And the next week she transferred me down, and that led to some early data analytics stuff, a lot of infrastructure opportunities, even did some mid-range and some software development. So it really opened my eyes to what technology can do, and that's kind of what led in my next, career and what got me into oil and gas, which was a position at Schlumberger.
Wow. So when you did something like that, did it quit when that opportunity came like that? They asked you to fill in. Was it immediate? Like you kind of said, you know what, man, I really like this stuff. After going you just got your degree or you just, going to school for all that time, did you latch onto this right away? Or was it something that I got to do this? Or you say, let me kind of pivot back?
No, this was a natural progression for me. It just, it's one of those in life, you're going to find things that you're just naturally good at. And I was just naturally good at technology. And I understood it quickly. I could comprehend, I could pick it up. And, it's kind of a fish in water.
So how much time did you spend there at IBM before you went to your first, the next opportunity with Schlumberger?
Yeah, I was less than a year because I was still interning before I jumped into Schlumberger.
Okay. And if I ask, where did we go to school? Where did you go to school at?
Screaming Eagles, University of North Texas up in Denton.
North Texas. Okay. Nice. How far is that from Houston?
No, it's a long way.
It's a long way. Okay.
It's about 6 hours.
6 hours away. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. First time being away from home and all that?
No, I moved down to Houston in '92. So
okay.
I've been, native Houstonian for, by and large.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. So, and Schlumberger, what was, your first, let's say, IT job itself? So I love
Well,
asking that.
yeah, I mean, so I was responsible for hooking up North America wireline network. And
Mhm.
so all those Schlumberger locations, whether it was the, terrestrial or land, data circuits or the satellites, I had responsibility for bringing all that together and used Schlumberger's information network. Back then we called it, SINET. It's, older technology. People would never heard it today, but it's X.25. And, that's how we connected the office up.
Wow. So, and then, through that progression, you as an, how long did you spend time in, let's say, as an engineer? And then, because I'm trying to pick, I would love to, share with you, you were an engineer, and then when did it transition over to the management side of the house?
Well, then that's where it gets interesting. So there was always a bit of management in this, even when I was an engineer. So I had to manage vendors, I had to manage my work, I had to manage the financials in terms of my cost and how much I spent for data circuits. So there was always this blend of just the business side, which my undergraduate is a bachelor of business administration with an emphasis in marketing, came into play. But then on my technical side, I had the great fortune of having some very, very smart people with Schlumberger's Information Network or SINET teach me a lot of the telecom side and the networking side of this thing. So I had some really strong technical mentors along the way.
That's great. Yeah, mentors are. I mean, I'm sure you'll share. We'll get into a little bit of mentors, but like mentors for me, like I love call outs because we don't get here alone, right? And folks that we appreciate. I've learned to kind of appreciate, look back and say, man, if it wasn't for this one lady that actually I interviewed 8 times to try to become an IT recruiter for the same company, and I guess in the ninth time that my interview, she finally this one lady gave me an opportunity. So every year, and I've been in the business for 30 years, I shoot her a quick either LinkedIn or some sort of text, just thanking her for the opportunity because it changed the trajectory where I was going. So I'm sure we all have some of those people that we kind of look back and kind of give them some props and some love on letting them know that you do appreciate everything they did for you.
Well, I mean, we all in our career in some circumstance or in some, respect have somebody that we stood on their shoulders that helped us along the way, that gave me and gave, every person that opportunity, that coaching, help them, in understanding something. We are not, machines, we're people, humans. And it's all about giving back, and you don't really understand that when you're a young kid. You're just starved for information. But as you get older, you want to pass that on to the next generation.
100%. And that's kind of like, again, that's our North Star here is, and we love about our title is just that next in line, that next gen, right? It's just a good opportunity. You know, um, I'm gonna let you the secret too, like from a school perspective, well, one of my favorite subjects and still my favorite projects to today, even though I didn't have a degree, is marketing. I mean, if I had to do it over, I would definitely have a degree in marketing. My daughter went that route, and it's like my favorite thing to do. How often is marketing in your role today, and you've been an IT and CIO for quite some time, has marketing come into play? Do you ever leverage some of those skills, everything that you learn?
Well, it comes into play every day. I mean, just think about what we're doing with technology. It's not about the technology. You have to go back to the basics of people, process, then technology. And a successful CIO doesn't just put in technology. He brings people together, toward that common goal of helping the business. We just happen to do it using technology. And when you bring those people together and build that kind of, cohesive, single vision, direction and path that you're going, you're able to get greater adoption and the technology has value.
Absolutely, 100%. Well said, man. That was, I've heard that quite some time. Like, doing this podcast, get to meet a lot of different people. And I will tell you, one of the narratives is always it's always going to be about the people first, process, and then tech. Tech is an enabler, I guess, but it starts with people. You know, um, how important do you feel? At least when I've been in for a long time, I would say that it was maybe the other way. It was more like through technology at things. What through time, was it always like that, or you always felt like it was people first in the organizations you work with? Did they have the mentality, or did they make the transition to that? Because
Well,
that's
it It kind of depends on what role you're in. So whenever I started with Schlumberger, it was very heavy tech because it was about connecting offices up. There really wasn't much in terms of how we adding value. Now we learned along the way, where do we add value? Because one of my people that mentored me and taught me along the way, taught me the importance of what I was doing and how that was helping the business. And that's when it began to start hitting me that what I'm doing has a greater impact than just, in that case, connecting offices up. You learn what they were doing with that connectivity. And that just kind of flowed further into my career. The biggest aha that I ever had was many years ago when I'm doing some of the same work, a little bit more on the application side, but by going to these offices around the world and asking questions and learning about how our business ran, I stumbled across the same customer that was going to two different business units asking for the same quote or for the same project. And these two business units, which were wholly owned by my company, were bidding against each other. And the one didn't know the other. So by bringing people together, we turned that around into a CRM package. And this is a long time ago, back in the 90s, a CRM package that allowed us to go to market with a stronger strategy and communications across the different divisions to avoid that, because we were just bidding ourselves out of business.
I'm sure that's a big win. I mean, I'm sure some of the results were increased revenue, bigger deals, more collaboration. I remember
Yep.
seeing what was this? Did you guys build a CRM back then, a custom one, or did you buy something?
Yeah, no, this is how old it was. It was built on Lotus Notes.
Oh man, I want to say it was. I know there was the Lotus. Who was the one that was also in accounting? Lotus 123, was it?
Lotus 123 and CC
Am I
Mail
saying
was
that
the
right?
early email. Yeah, but I
Did,
mean, the tech is, sort of the how it's delivered. It's the what that's important, and the idea or the solve and the business value was, let's take our sales offices and connect them together across the company globally, so that we can see what pursuits we're doing. What are the bids going out? What are the applications that they're being used for? And then collaborate better for, a stronger go to market.
so if I had to like, thanks for sharing that. I agree 1000% with everything you mentioned there. I mean, that must have been a really big time business impact. Um, After Schlumberger, after that tour did there, what was the next opportunity? And what was the first time? I know you mentioned you managed throughout your career, like different projects and yourself, tasks and money and all that. But when did you have your first opportunity to come to Seattle?
So I actually got the head nod when I was with the company after Schlumberger. Company's called Keystone Valve, and they're now part of Tyco Flow Control. And we just put in an ERP system in Singapore for Asia Pacific. And when I came back from that project, I got the head nod and promoted to an IT director role. And I had a lot of, wins and some not so good wins. But I learned along the way, and that same mentor taught me, what works and what doesn't work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thanks for mentioning that because something that I do remember and I shared with a couple of people and I dropped your name a few times about it was a quote that I wrote down. I actually say failure is not final, success is not forever.
Yeah, you heard that from me, and I can't remember where I heard that from. But
That was
it's
good.
so true. I mean, we only learn when we make mistakes. When we
That's
do
right.
something right the first time, we already knew that. There was nothing really you learned. You just figured out the right way to do it. When you have failures, you figure out the wrong way to do it, and you have to embrace those and have a certain resilience to continue to try it again. And
Absolutely.
don't look back on the failures. Learn from your failures, but look ahead as you go into the next challenge.
And do you mind sharing a little bit about what you mean by like success is not forever?
Well, just because you had a success with a particular project or an implementation or some major deliverable, that's not a guarantee that you're going to hit the ball, out of the park every time you go at bat. Even the best baseball players, Babe Ruth, did not hit the ball, hit a home run every time he went up to bat. He struck
That's
out
right.
a lot. He got out a lot. And that's what I mean by that. We're going to have failures in life, and we learn from them.
So, you mentioned, I love that you said sports related, because it hit me, very similar, because I'm big in baseball fan, been a baseball coach. And, I agree. Like you have to have, it is not forever. If you sit on those wins too long, I mean, it's just bound, you're going to fail way more than you succeed in the same game, right? All the
Well, and
time.
if you're successful every time you're doing something, you're not challenging yourself. You're stuck in that. Okay, this is as much as this is as far as I'll go. Because it's not until we hit some failures is when we're actually pushing ourselves to do more or to excel in certain ways. I mean, I had a particular failure, and it was actually at Schlumberger, where I kind of made a misjudgment on the placement of a data ground as part of a major move for data center that we were doing, and through those actions, burned up a ton of equipment
Mm.
that we had in the data center. And I thought for sure they were going to just fire me. And I remember distinctly calling my father, "That's it. They're going to fire me. I'm out of here. I've done all this damage to this equipment. This is thousands and thousands of dollars." And he said, "Well, you got two choices. You can be a man and take care of your business, or you can come home." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Let me give this a shot here." And so, in that time, that person, my father, taught me resilience. And
That's
then
right.
I, opened up our disaster recovery plan because my director at the time drilled into us. What's your plan B? What's your plan C? What if the equipment falls off the truck? What if the truck has a wreck? What if you get there and the equipment doesn't work? And we got all these contingencies worked out, and we exercised our contingency for that. And in less than 24 hours, everything was fixed and it was back up and running. Unbeknownst to me, there was a group of our leaders in a corner room, all kind of talking, and I was like, "Oh, they're going to fire me. They're just figuring out how to do it." Well,
Wow.
later that night, it was announced that here's your nickname now, and it was Sparky. And Schlumberger has such a grapevine network. The next day, this was a late Sunday night. The next day, Monday morning, I got a phone call from Schlumberger Sinet in Paris looking for Sparky.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and I have
Love that.
people to this day refer to me as Sparky. That's the only way they know me. But it's through that failure that I learned between my father teaching me resilience, my director or mentor teaching me planning and contingencies, and that staying calm in a crisis. And then the technical people around me teaching me the technology, having that same calmness of, well, let's just go take care of that problem. And it worked out. And so I was a success, even though I had a failure because of those that supported me in that journey.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, man. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, celebrating that a little bit, because I couldn't imagine a young man feeling like that. Like, you see this guy's in the corner, you're just like, the anxiety, you're going through all that. And then, you stood your ground, and, like you said, you exercised everything that you learned, and you owned it and became out of it. Right.
Oh
So it
yeah, and
wasn't
then
the end.
you burn up. I burned up. I don't know, 10 times what I made in a year worth
Oh,
of computer equipment.
and you start thinking about that in your head, and it's like, it's just, wow. Well, I mean, I think you did pretty well for yourself. I mean,
Yeah, but we're human too. I mean, right? We make mistakes, and the other thing that they taught that this same mentor taught me is you really embrace your failures. You don't run away from them. You learn from them, and I've never once terminated somebody or disciplined somebody for making a failure or having a failure. We learn from it. We have those open and honest discussions because we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things wrong. We're going to look back and go, "Oh, that wasn't very smart. I wonder why I did that way." But we learn from it and we go on. And I find that whenever you drill that into your team and you reinforce that through your actions, and every after action I've ever had since has been about fact finding, not fault finding. What do we learn from it? How do we be stronger? Because of that. And I find that I get a lot stronger team that's really not afraid to challenge themselves and grow because they're not worried about failure. Failure is just a symptom of growing.
Man, thanks for sharing that. I wrote something down. You said there, I like a lot. He said it's fact finding, not fault finding.
Yep.
I, that hit me pretty good because, it's quick to like reaction, right? You stay calm. I was in the military and you have to like stay calm, right? And I like that because I think sometimes it's a reflex. Um, who did this or what, or, blame or whatever it may be. But like, that's not really going to fix the problem, right? Let's like forget the facts and let's knock this thing out together. Maybe focus on like like learn the lesson after, like post mortems or whatever, like that, something like that. But absolutely, I mean, thanks for sharing that. Thank you. Um, it it sounds like it's probably safe to assume that this is something you talked about with your future teams and things that not even where you were currently at, but along the way in your organizations that you inherited new employees. Is these things that you share all the time with them, like this specific story?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's something that you just are. We had another somewhat similar to what I had at Schlumberger. We lost a major storage system in our office in Singapore with a different company,
Hmm.
and it was very disruptive. We had literally billions of dollars worth of projects that had stopped because of this failure, and we couldn't get it back. It was a major hardware failure. We just collected as a team. We all hot shot out ourselves down to Singapore. We worked closely with the vendor. We got the system back up, and then we had that after action to learn what happened and why did we have this failure. And that team grew from that and became stronger because of it. And some of those people that were on that team work for me even today in a different company.
Wow, look at that. So it's the same thing, and like own it together, stay calm, and just things will happen. I mean, some stuff's even out of your control, right? I mean,
Yep.
especially with technologies, there's a lot of dependencies on the different things. Um, so you created, so probably something as far as, let's say a nugget, I like to call it, is kind of advice you would give out to folks is to make sure that you create environments that I guess is safe to fail or to talk about it or like, don't run away from it. Things are going to happen. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when it's going to happen.
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that
we
something?
we 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 try to plan so that doesn't happen, and this is where
Sure.
some of the other disciplines that we in IT have change management, incident management, disaster recovery planning. It's just like with cybersecurity. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I
That's
mean,
right.
because everybody has some kind of cyber event today. Well, what's your mitigation plans? And are you testing those out? And have you thought through the different scenarios for an incident response to a cyber attack? And then you just open that book and exercise it, and you may find some holes or something different or a new attack vector or whatever it happens to be, and you learn from it, and then you move on as a team. So it's not just we keep doing stuff, and if it fails, oh well, it fails. We have to follow those disciplines to prevent that and learn from each of those failures. Because we don't want to keep making the same mistake. That's a different problem. That's just carelessness.
Yeah, that's absolutely, absolutely. Let me ask you, I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. What do you feel, what does it mean to you, let's say to be a great, if somebody says, what is a great, can you describe what a great CIO is or, someone that's a successful CIO? How
Yeah,
would you
to me,
describe?
being a great CIO goes far beyond the technology. It's about leadership alignment and trust. It's a CIO connects the technology to business outcomes and brings people together to achieve those business outcomes through technology. And so it's very much people oriented, but technology enabled. And this is where the CIO role is a bit unique. And for me, I have to understand both sides. So you asked earlier about where do I use the marketing? Well, I use the marketing on the people side of this because it's about, connecting to people in ways that they understand. So if I'm working in Asia Pacific, it's more about group harmony. If I'm working in Italy, it's more about passion to find innovation. I'm, in the U.S., it's more direct, fast decision making. So you work in the areas and the culture that you're exposed to bring people together. And then you introduce them to the technology. And through the disciplines that we follow in IT, that technology can be a very powerful thing to help companies excel. But, it starts with the people and it starts with the alignment and in terms of what we're going to go do. What do we want to solve with technology? I've seen many, many times where, CIO will come in with a great idea on technology. And if we get this, we're going to solve all our problems. If we do data analytics, we're going to solve all our problems. But they don't define what are the problems they're solving for. I've been with companies that said, we get an analytic program, we're going to have better asset management. What does better asset management mean? Well, we don't have any downtime. Well, that's not going to happen. So, what causes downtime? And you have to break that down into the components to figure out, okay, what are you using analytics to study? And it's that, connecting, at a, business level to define what the problem is and then bring technology in to show how technology can solve that problem for someone. And through that, journey together between the business and IT, then you have the adoption. And that's when technology can really come together. That's what makes a business transformation.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thanks for sharing. I wrote that down: leadership, alignment, and trust. Right. But when you kind of going into a business transformation, let me ask you a couple of questions about that. I was studying that a little bit because I hear this, obviously been hearing this for a long time, digital transformation. But what do you feel like, what's the most misunderstood part of digital transformation sitting from your seat today?
No, I think the most misunderstood thing with the digital transformation is that people think it's about tech. It's not. Digital transformation is tech enabled, but it's business driven. So it's really understanding why we do what we do. And I've been with companies that did things a certain way that they had to. They didn't have the technology behind them, or the technology wasn't available. I mean, there's a period of time that we used to do, faxes, or teletype. And today we do email. It's all instantaneous.
Right.
But I mean, that's a form of digital transformation, but it's just tech. What do we do with that? How do we use that? And I even remember introducing early emails, and one of my executives would have his secretary print off his emails. He would hand scribe the note, and then she would type in the email to go back to the person, that sent the original email. And I said, no, that's not how this works. You are able to type your own email back. And it's that, connecting with people again. The other part in the digital transformation is really, to me, it's about how are we making the business run more efficiently. And there's some companies that just don't understand what technology is capable of. And if you bring in, we can do this whole automated process, but you don't really connect it to what am I going to improve with your life. Your adoption may not be there because they don't understand, just the tech. So it's technology enabled, but it's a business driven.
Technology enabled. I'm taking some notes here. This is all good stuff. And business driven. How do you feel about, I've heard a few statements about it's all about people. What about people transformation? Like more of a mindset.
Oh, it is huge. And so, I've done major, global implementations where we spent a significant budget just on organizational change management, having people understand how their jobs will change, why, and where do they add value. See, when we do the same job day in and day out for 10 years, and then all of a sudden my job changes, I would question my value. If I'm used to running around putting out fires all day, I value myself based on how many fires I'm putting out. But if I bring in technology where I can leverage my knowledge of what's causing all those fires to eliminate them and run a more efficient, say, operations, without the change management, people may wonder, well, I'm not adding any value because I'm not putting out fires. So, where do I sit? And people, if they don't feel valued, they're going to question their role in the organization. Because in my mind, people look for three things. They want to love what they do, they want to love who they do it with and for, and they want to add value. And if
I
you get
agree.
all three of those, then you're in the right position. So, as part of any digital transformation, you have to show those people, those humans, how this technology is going to make their life better and where they're going to add value because it will likely change.
Sure. That's an excellent point. Let me on something along that line. I got to ask a question about this. What about scenarios where you have, yes, it's great for the company, and maybe you have outliers that just are comfortable doing the way they've always done those things, and are resistant towards it. I mean, how do any best practice, any kind of advice there to kind of because it's hard to move forward when if you have some outliers.
Well, you're always going to have outliers, right? I remember I was doing some consulting work for a supply company, and the guy did inventory with clothespins, in literally, and so he knew his mid max orders, just in his head, and when he pulled enough of whatever supplies off, he'd put a clothespin in, and at the end of the week he'd go pull his clothespins, and that's what his order quantities were. And worked for him for a long time. But we showed him how he don't have to worry about the clothespins. He just kept his inventory in this computer system, and we gave him back so much time he can go fishing. And so we connected to, hey, if we can do this better, I mean, it's a small company. We can do this better. Your business can run more efficiently, and you have more time for yourself to go do the things that you value, not just sitting here counting inventory. And so you look for where can I connect that to where someone feels like they add value. Where is their passion? What do they want to do? And you bring those people together, in such a way where everybody's doing where their passion is. You can really create a very powerful team, and it can deliver a lot of function.
That's excellent, man. Thank you for that, because this, throughout my career, I've always I would say, struggled, because I'm me on a personal level. Like been an entrepreneur since '04, and you learn as an entrepreneur, you have to be really scrappy, and you have to be able to be changes constant, and you got to be able to pivot. And it's almost like it becomes a superpower. And sometimes it's tough as your company grows, and this is where we have to do, or we have to do this way, or you're vulnerable. You're going to be in a vulnerable state. You can be not competitive, right? You can miss opportunities. And so I struggle with the patience part of that part. So I got to probably more focus more on, let me go down to the individual and show them how it actually benefits them individually.
Yeah, and what's interesting with some of this, you can look at what good looks like and go and recognize it and go, that's good. I recognize quality in a process, or quality in a company, or quality in how things are run, and you go, man, that's fantastic. But can you build that? And that's where it gets into this unique skill of knowing, not just knowing what good looks like, but knowing how to navigate to get to good, and how to bring the people, process, technology, and the corporate cultures together to go build what's good.
That's excellent. That's great. So, want to kind of go down that change route again. How, I guess, would you share some, let's say, negative things? Let's say things that if companies don't change, like, let's say, what kind of position does it put them in? If they don't do something, if they don't make that, let's say, that strategic direction and change and leverage technology to help you get there. What are some things have you seen in your history that, let's say, negatively affected them?
Well, and so keep in mind too, technology means different things to different companies. I'm going to want to be much quicker to adopt technology, say if I'm doing electronic trading, than I am if I'm building resilient seated butterfly valves. I'm going to view technology a little differently. So I think it's what fits my business and what fits my challenges that I have. And it's one of those, we either change or we'll get changed out. It's kind of like the company that made or the last company that made buggy whips. I imagine that was a really good company, but they didn't evolve. They didn't, change over time. And, there's not hardly anybody that makes a buggy whip anymore because we don't need them.
That's
It's
right.
the same thing with technology. So, if you're not exploring some emerging tech in some level with agentic AI or Gen AI or analytics and what are we doing with data or how do we build people process into a workflow inside of modern systems, if you're not at least exploring on what and with your IT leaders, what
Hmm.
technology can do to improve either our plant operations or, how we dispatch people to the field or, how we measure inventory or how we send and receive invoices, you're kind of stagnant and somebody else is figuring out a better way to solve that problem. And if you're not growing, you're dying.
That's right. You're growing, you're down. I agree with that. I guess, being an entrepreneur for so long is you have that, you know, constantly in your head, right? Like, you have to stay competitive ahead. Um, and so you're always looking for opportunities, but like, and also I guess there's also a balance too. Like too much change could backfire, right? Um,
Well, and it's understanding the amount of change that an organization can absorb. I mean, like I said, I've done these big global, rollouts of systems, and we spent a lot of money on organizational change management because we had a lot of people involved, a lot of process areas we were touching, a lot of, geographies we were dealing with, a lot of cultures we were dealing with. And, that takes, you know, just like any implementation or any, change anywhere in an organization, that has to be a concerted effort. It doesn't just happen. And so depending on how the company culture is as to how much you can absorb in a pace of change. I mean, some companies embrace disruptors, because they want to be agile and they attract those kind of people that are looking to constantly challenge the status quo and disrupt the market or disrupt how things are done. But there's other companies that are fairly static and stable industries, that have some of that. And the measure and pace of change has to be controlled just because
mhm.
of how large they are. So this is, I think, why you see some smaller companies, really start to challenge some of the larger companies because of the technology.
Yeah. Something I took from that, I wrote down a note there too, is that, with these massive, let's say, like some of the stuff that you've been involved in on a global level, like you have to put as much time into that organizational change management as much as you budgeted for any other part of the project, even the tech piece to the whatever. I mean, if not, maybe more, because that's who's going to be operating the day to day, right?
Yep.
Um,
Well, and as part of that, you have to measure, how's the technology adopted? How's it used? Where is it adding value? Because just putting it in and then having your teams go behind and work outside the system in a
mm,
more inefficient way doesn't add value. It'll bankrupt the company doing that. So you want to drive the adoption. And you want to build a good process. And so how do you keep people motivated? In what you're doing, and keeping them engaged and showing them how this can improve. I mean, the greatest story that I had with this is whenever we changed out a major document management system as part of a massive business transformation in a global company. And I remember the gauge or the measurement to success was how quiet the office had gotten because the printer wasn't running constantly. We would print out 40,000 documents, per
what?
project.
Wow.
And, and these are, controlled documents. They'd go around for like physical paper reviews and they'd be, wet signatures on them and they'd be, with pen marked up and everything. And we made all that electronic. And so when I was in Singapore for this, the guy running document management, document controls, called me and said, Jim, come here. Yeah, what is it? And he said, listen, I don't hear anything. I said, that's right, it's quiet. That printer is not going. But look, I know where all my documents are. I know who's got them in review and who hasn't reviewed it. And I went, yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. I said, no, this is really, really great. And they were some of the early,
Big win.
because they were having to get away from handling a physical piece of paper, and that was somewhat unnerving for them. Because
Sure.
again, there's a book out that's called "Who Moved My Cheese?" We moved their cheese,
Yeah.
and
Move
so
that cheese.
we had to show them how they'll still do their job, but do it more efficiently and have greater insight. And it was a huge win.
That was great, man. Great. Thanks for sharing that one. But that's a good one, right? That's a massive amount of documents. I mean, to be printing out, and you're right. You know, it's pretty profound that he said, like, just listen, and you're like, wait, yeah, exactly, nothing, right? You don't hear anything. That's a massive win, right? And then the real time where everybody's at, with in every stage. I mean, that's the power of tech, right? Let me
Yep.
ask you this. I mean, just kind of wrap on the change, right? How do you begin? Let's say, how do you earn buy-in for change?
Well, to me, it's telling stories. I mean, it's understanding the business, and then let's tell the story. I mean, no different than sitting around a campfire and you know whatever stories you're telling around the campfire. And where I found success is let's paint a picture of what the ideal looks like, and let's see how much of that can we do, and where would that add value. But then having a series of those discussions, not in IT terms. Remember, people, process, then technology. So understanding where are the pains in the company. I have to constantly redo work because our materials come in out of sequence, and we don't figure out we have a problem with where this pipe's located, or whatever. And then by the time we get the pump in, we can't install the pump because the pipe's in the way, and we didn't know that. And so that leads itself to supply chain management, materials movement, you know alignment with your schedules, all that kind of technical stuff. But you just tell the story. Oh, what if we got the same the materials in sequence for when you needed to have it, you know, on the job site? Or if we did 3D modeling and you could walk through the unit and see where everything is, as opposed to just on a 2D map or 2D drawing. Finding ways with technology to solve the problems that are causing pain or disruption in the business.
I like that. So you do that well up front before you're talking about even introducing the change. Get that
Yep.
buy-in, get them to agree to basically, yeah, that would be pretty cool. That would be make my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right. That's
I
great,
mean,
man.
we're we've done some of this even recently, where part of our business is getting people dispatched to jobs. So how can we automate some of that with AI, agentic AI, to do that touch point with the skilled trade person that we want to get to the for the field uh, worker. So where can we use AI to maintain a touch point with 3, 4, 5,000 people to get them dispatched to jobs, so I don't have to do that manually.
That'd be a nice one. Now, does that community of, I guess, that talent community, what would be? Do you have something in place today? Do they actually? Because every talent community is different, right? So you have IT guys that are mostly, very connected, right? And some are not. Some other communities are not. Is that community connected in order to be able to make those touch points?
Well, and that's part of what you do as a CIO. So you bring people together. So in this case, I brought some vendors together to, that understand some of that technology. We connect
Sure.
with people in the business that know what they've got to get done, and then we have some conversations.
Nice. Oh, they collectively, you guys solution it together. That's what it
Yep,
sounds like.
yep.
I love that.
Remember,
What would you
people,
say?
process,
Yep,
then technology.
that's the North Star, right? What would you say? What's one capability an IT organization must master, especially right now in the next 12 months with, AI and this thing moving pretty quick. What would you say,
So,
like one?
so I think I'll surprise you with some of that. It's not about technology, because we can learn technology. We're always learning new technology,
Sure.
and I can't tell you how many college kids I've interviewed that understand application of technology, but didn't really understand the underlying technology. It goes back down to basics. So what do we do in IT, around technology? Well, certainly you have to have those people that understand the bits and bytes of how things work. I mean, no doubt about that. But to really gain value in that, you have to connect that to a certain business value. And to achieve that, you need to have successful project execution. So the core in all of this is that project management. So how do we stand up an initiative to go deliver technology that solves a business problem that's aligned to business objectives? The only way you're going to realize or achieve that is through successful project execution. And there's a whole discipline around that sort of thing. When you do that and you follow all the check marks of what's involved in implementing your project, change management, organizational change management, adoption, software development, whatever it happens to be, you'll have a successful project, or the chances of you having a successful project are greatly increased.
That's good. That's really good. You're making me take a lot of notes here. So there was a few more that I wanted to ask you because this is like it's like free, mentorship right now, live right now, which is awesome. Where do you see, maybe say the biggest untapped opportunity for IT, to directly impact revenue?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one because revenue is different things for different companies. I think we are in the precipice right now with artificial intelligence. It's going to make the internet seem like a kid's game. The capabilities of this tool that's out there are just incredible. I have never seen anything like that in my entire career. And it has that opportunity to be misunderstood and, perhaps create a lot of disruption because there's not this understanding of what it's capable of and what it's not capable of yet. So I believe that greatest, future looking out is where can we use, these large language models and agentic AI to help improve, say, workflow automation or decision making or analytics. And we're seeing this embedded in all kinds of technology today. And it's how do we capitalize or how do we leverage that technology to run our business, to create more revenue? Like the revenue means different things. Sometimes it means, picking up more projects and putting more people on a project. Sometimes it means, selling more widgets. Sometimes it means, coming together to deliver larger projects that take more people. It just means different things to different people. But at the center of all of that, I believe is you're going to see a lot of agentic AI.
Agreed. I mean, I feel like the more that we look, just the more the possibilities. Just like I don't think it ever ends. It's just there's so much of it. I mean,
see and that technology is changing at such a rapid pace. You can't keep up. I can't keep up. Yeah, and this is where I look to the younger generation that, understands this. Just like when I was younger, I understood things that my parents just didn't understand because I grew up with a personal computer. And, we have, kids coming out of college today that are quite comfortable with technology, using things like AI, ChatGPT and such, and very proficient in it, just like I was with a computer and, Lotus 1-2-3 spreadsheets.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Thanks for sharing that, man. Any advice would you give, let's say, two different camps? Let's talk about the next generation coming up. They just got, the college grad kids that are out there right now. 70+% of them are struggling to get in the door, in the door of these organs, just for a job, and they're pivoting to just do whatever. Any recommendations there? Would you give advice to that community, that talent pool, to help them get in the door somewhere?
No, man, that's a tough one because it is a tough market. But I think it's always been a tough market. It was for me when I started out. I've got a college graduate recently, and it's tough for him. and he's got a degree from a prestigious college. I think the best thing I could say is be willing and be authentic. So, but don't be desperate. I mean, be willing to do whatever that job is, and then look where you can add value in that job. Sometimes it just means doing what's asked of you. Sometimes it could be, hey, I see what you're doing here. If we did this way, you might save a little bit. And it's those companies that are looking forward, as opposed to just being stuck in where we are today. That's where they'll find, the opportunity. And I would also tell them that wherever you start is not where you're going to stay.
You go.
I've got a family member that's been with the same company her entire career. You don't see that anymore.
No,
I've been with more than a few companies, and so is everybody else. I mean, it's just where you start is not where you're gonna have your career. So learn from it, but add value to it. And as you add value, you'll learn more.
absolutely. That's great advice. The be willing hit me pretty good. I think that's the missed, look for opportunity versus money.
Yep.
I feel,
I mean,
and just,
again, if you look at my three values: love what you do, love who you do it with and for, and feel like you add value. You hit all three of those, the money is going to come.
100%. It'll follow. It's all timing. It's all timing, to me. So I come with it. And like what you said, where you start is not necessarily where you're going to, that's a good one. That's a good one because, I tell people like, if you get in let's get in the door. Let's get in the door. If you get in the door, you can fight. You better fight the fight in the ring. You better fighting inside the ring versus outside the ring, right? It's
Yep.
tough
Yep.
and get in the door.
And the other thing I would say for the younger generation is the world owes you nothing.
There you go.
You have to go out and earn it. And I
Amen.
see so much of that today, even with kids I've run across. They feel like they're owed something. Just because whether it's everybody got a participation trophy growing up or whatever it is, I'm not sure why, but they feel
Seven.
very entitled, and the world owes you nothing, so you have to go out and earn it.
That's right. No, I mean, you're hitting a lot of chords with me right now, man. I love that. I mean, that's a little tough on mine, because I was just vowed to like, you can't have that mentality. You got to earn your way in, and then earn your keep every day. Right. That was a big thing for me. So what about on the other side? Let's flip side that real quick. Cause sometimes I have a lot of friends of mine that are, in leadership, been in business, IT for a long time. And then they find themselves all of a sudden, there's changes, things happen, right? They're out of work, they're in transition, whatever it may be. And the title, it becomes sometimes, there's not that many, let's say, positions, depending on the flexibility if you have to stay with, if you can't relocate or whatever it may be. And they're willing to do whatever, but it's perceived that they only would do that temporarily because of the title that they're at. They're not going to stay long, right?
Yeah,
That's a
and
one. I don't know how to
and
get that kind of
and,
advice sometimes.
and that's always a tough one. I mean, it just is. It's the nature of business, And candidly, I'm not sure how you overcome some of that. Some companies look past that.
Yeah,
I find that if you're just authentic with the people you're talking to, and you're just being honest with them and genuine, people will recognize that, as opposed to I'm going to say whatever I got to say to get this, because if I don't get this, I can't pay rent next month or something like that. I mean, that desperation is always going to come across, but just be authentic.
okay, no. Yeah. I try to like kind of look back, or some of the weaknesses I used to perceive, like maybe not going to school or I went the military route, so I always had this perception that that was against me, so I had to work harder or try harder, just don't go away. Um, And sometimes I feel like, okay, just because you try to get in the door, that's one time. Don't stop trying, right? That person won't go away. I mean, eventually, like, you might get a shot. You might convince them. Like, you might create a better timing for yourself. And that's what I found for myself. That even business development, it's never necessarily a no, but it's maybe just not yet. It's just like a reframe. perspective. If you know that this is who you want to do business with, and this is why, and you got to continue to try.
Well,
But
and I would say always look for where I can add value. I mean, even through, coming into that maybe a lower level position, but, paint the picture where you can add value, where your experience can add value to the organization. Or maybe you did your homework, you found a challenge that, they were having, and you can, as part of the interview process, present to them a solution that you could do.
that's right.
Try to go out and solve problems. Don't, you know, try to, just go out and earn a job or get a job. Go out and solve problems.
I like that. Jim, I like that a lot, actually. Being proactive, and why not? You'll definitely hit it from a different angle. I think not everybody's going to wind up trying that. There's a small community of people that may go that far, and that's when you create opportunity for yourself.
Mhm. I mean, I
That's
always
a
tell my team, be proactive, be productive, and be professional.
right. I think I'm going to know the answer to this one, my friend, but I got to ask it. It's really for the community. Um, Encourage, like patience, right? That's another one, right? Patience. You get a kid, let's say a brand new next generation guy that girl, guy, whoever, they come in the door. Uh, do they don't want to sit in this? Do you find that they will not want to sit in that seat too long? They want to get to that next level tomorrow. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that many times where, the I don't know what it is, but like going through college and in the school system, if I do these things, this is what I get. And life isn't like that. I mean, it's not if I check all the boxes, this is what I get in the end.
sure.
So things are going to happen when they're going to happen. And, if you just focus on how you're helping the organization or adding value to the company and being that, reliable, someone that your leader can count on in a pinch, that's going to be there, that's always going to take care of what's got to get taken care of. The opportunities will then come, and they're not going to come when maybe expect them to come, but they're going to come.
Good one there too. I agree with you 100%. So just because a coach, I've been there doing a coach for like, I don't know, since my son was 4, and I think I retired, or when he went to high school, or forced to retire when he went to high school because he had to turn the keys over a little bit. But you got, in the organizations that you work with, like what's somebody what do they do to get your attention? Like, like what would get their attention to say, wow, that's I got to put some time into that, but they're pretty good at what they're
I mean,
doing.
I mean, the biggest thing that I look for is, look, we run into situations every day where something's not working right, or there's a problem somewhere, or
Yeah.
something broken or whatever. Where I get it, notice somebody is whenever they don't bring me a problem, but they say, "Hey, we've got this, but this is what I wanted to do to go fix that." So they're bringing me solutions, and then we can talk about whether that's a smart solution or not a smart solution. So they're thinking ahead, and as a leader, that's something that's very important to have on your team. If they're just bringing you problems all the time, it's like, okay, what do I have you for? If I'm having to solve all your problems, you know, I can do that, but I'd rather have you solve your problem.
That's right. So that's going to get, that absolutely going to get attention. I mean, if there's someone's consistent saying, I'm bringing stuff to the table, I'm bringing a problem, an issue that I identify, but this is what, they're running ideas and solutions by you. That's going to get you noticed.
Hmm. And then always be willing to raise your hand,
Volunteer.
and be authentic. Hey, I really don't know this technology, but I'm willing to learn. Where can you point me to a direction to learn, or what resources can you point me to learn, so that I can add value to the team?
Yeah. So in your, and you as a coach and leader, um, you encourage like them if they want to learn more new things. Can they do knock on the door after hours type stuff? Volunteer to do. I want to learn security, but I'm in,
Mhm.
I'm in QA or something. Do you encourage that? Do you welcome stuff like that?
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not even with the company. sometimes, hey, let's go volunteer somewhere so I can exercise, cybersecurity at this nonprofit.
Nice. That's good. I like that. Yeah, because I mean, sometimes like, we go recruiting, and then you may have a lot of talent inside the house. Might be over that's ready, that might, to groom. I'm learning that like a lot of my clients right now, especially with, in the US, salary issues, the challenges, like, equity issues, things like that. It might be better just to grow talent. By the time you find somebody in 6 months, you can actually have a pretty strong individual, especially at the rate and speed that AI and IT runs. So,
Mm-hmm.
growing talent is sometimes almost better. It's almost preferred.
Yep. But and you have to also be somewhat, I would say, self-aware. I love the sound of a piano. I'm in no way a concert pianist. No amount of schooling is going to make me sound like a concert pianist.
As hard as I
And
try, right?
and we have to recognize our limitations. Not that we don't, push our boundaries, but we need to recognize what is it that we are good at and focus on that. And where, I still have a passion around piano. I'm just no good at playing it.
No, that's right. I mean, I relate those things to sports too. Like, like go deep, hard in on something, and which your strength is, and you can, it's hard enough to do. Like, not everybody can do what Otani does, right? Pitch
Yep.
and hit. One or the other for most people. That's a rare occasion. Did you happen to see that like a week ago? That 3 home runs and 10 strikeouts. Oof, that
Yep.
was one
Yeah,
of
I saw that in the World Series.
that was wild. So, my friend, let me ask you this. Kind of wrapping up here, I gotta ask you this one, 'cause I know you're gonna have a good nugget over there for them. Um, what advice, if you had to mentor, the next generation of CIOs, what are 3 things would you want to at least leave them with?
What are the three things? What?
If you're mentoring the next generation CIO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next time, what are 3 things would you focus on if you had to mentor them?
So I would say do what you said because that builds credibility. I would say focus on the basics, not the technology. I mean,
Like
you
that.
need to understand the technology, but what it will get you there is the basics. The basics of foundationally how we run IT. And it's no different than most businesses how they run with change management and whatnot, project execution and whatnot. And then, you know, build relationships and build relationships with those that are outside of your technical area. Go learn the business. I mentioned
Learn.
earlier about, resilient seated butterfly valves. I actually made resilient seated butterfly valves at a company I was at. First two
Did
weeks
it?
on the job, I went down the shop floor and I learned how to make resilient seated butterfly valves. When I was at Schlumberger, I went out and logged a well. I didn't log it. I mean, I was out there observing to understand how our technology is used
Sure.
to support the business. When I was, oil and gas making FPSOs, I went out to the vessel to understand how the vessel operates. How do we
Oh,
execute a project? So learn the business.
that's well said. That's well said. I agree. That says a lot. Um, and as we wrap up, I have to ask you this: what would you say? Looking back at your career, you spent a lot of time, and you're obviously very successful, and you have a lot to offer. What would you say the most proud of?
I was most proud of it would be my teams. And there's lots of little success stories. Having very dysfunctional teams that didn't get along, and I had one time they got into a fist fight out in the parking lot. But bringing those teams together, to where they're working as a team, is huge, and supporting them in that journey. We can point to business successes and how we increase this revenue, or we improved EBITDA, and all these other measures of financial success. But at the end of the day, I look at how many people have worked for me that I've mentored that are now IT directors or
There you go.
moving into their first CIO role. or they've decided they don't want to do technology. They want to go write music, and I've been a small part of that journey for them to help them in their career or in their life journey. That's the measurement of success, that I look for.
That's well said. That's legacy right there, man. That's affecting people for forever, you know? And we have, that responsibility, when people, they spend most of their time at work, most of their life at work. And you guys are, you know, like a military guy. So like you have to be really tight with each other. That's how you
Mm-hmm.
get through everything. So
Well, and you go, find people that have a passion for doing whatever it is you've got to get done. You put them on that task or that job. You give them the freedom, the flexibility, and the support to do that job, and teach them along the way. Have the guardrails to keep them on the path. And if they stray off, help them guide back in and keep them motivated and support them. You're gonna have a lot of success. I mean, I always tell my team that I'll be your biggest supporter, with the business, and we're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. Let's go learn from those mistakes. Let's don't try to hide them from the business, because trust me, the business is making mistakes too.
that's right.
So let's embrace that.
That's excellent, man. Well, Jim, thanks for sharing that. As we wrap up here, I want to thank you for your time. You have a lot of nuggets there. My marketing team's going to have a field day with this stuff. So we're going to make sure we send you everything. And again, I wrote down probably about 6 pages of notes and quotes here. So hats off to you, man. You have a wonderful career. Thanks for sharing your time on Next in Line and paying it forward for us, man. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the invite. I've had a good time doing it.